Really excited for this one. We're going to be talking about how to develop high-performing leadership capabilities to thrive in a hybrid workplace. I've got some amazing panelists. I promised them I wouldn't get all of their names wrong, so I'm going to try my best now. So we're joined by Marieke van den Berg, Senior Vice President of HR Northern Europe for the Adecco Group, Tessa van Westrenen. Oh no, did I do all right? I don't know right. Owner of Shadow Consulting and Chief HR Officer at BOAL Group. Our good friend Paul-Olivier, Raynaud-Lacroze, who's I can't get your name wrong now. It's been so many times now, Paul. Thank you for joining us. He's a Senior Vice President of HR and Sales Excellence at Dormakaba. And last, but certainly not least, we've got Ditte, Westrenen, Wulf, Global Chief HR Officer of Covetrus. Welcome, everyone. How are you all?
We are great.
Very good.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, putting up with us. I know you're like, Chris, I see you too often. I can't see you again every week. I appreciate you coming back. Ditte, I'm going to come to you first, if that's all right with you. What are sort of the differences you've noticed in the past sort of 2.5 years when it comes to high performance leadership capabilities?
Yeah, I think, thank you first of all for the invitation. I'm so excited to be here. When I was reflecting on it the past weeks, I think we're actually moving from one global crisis with COVID to another crisis that we now have in many of our businesses around the world with less supply chain, more inflation, a global recession coming in, and all these global socioeconomic factors are also changing the leadership landscape. So I believe that there will be more and more people working from home, even though we're trying to get all the employees back to the office. And there will be more anxiety and uncertainty. So even though we all felt we've been through COVID, even though we have COVID coming again, we're actually moving into a new set of crises between the social financial landscape, which will mean a lot for our leadership again. So as we thought it was just over, now we're just moving into a new world with tons of leadership challenges again. My experience and with Covetrus and when I speak to other HR folks is that there's so much need for inclusiveness, diversity, humbleness, and that we are really good at engaging our teams over Zoom. And a concrete example, something we have done in my own team at Covetrus, is that we have done team building every second week. And how do you do team building with people sitting all over the world, calling in? And we have done a lot of more personal stuff. We have learned how to listen on a deeper level, how to ask questions really about how are you doing, not only with your job, but also as a person. How is it going at home? Maybe your husband or wife lost their job. Maybe you have someone who is sick. So we have really tried to build internal capabilities of listening, inclusiveness, and just be really, really good leaders and be more having shorter meetings with a much more purpose-driven agenda. But of course, I'm super excited to hear from Tessa and Pio and Marieke as well, of course.
No, I mean, I agree with what Ditte said. It's true that we are hoping that after COVID, we could go back to kind of a normal world. And of course, we are not. Exactly what Ditte said. I also see, we are talking about leadership. What I see also is that I'm not sure that our politicians in general in the world are showing great leadership. And what I want to say by that is that in a sense, it falls back on the companies and the managers to kind of be the great leaders for their employees, which are of course also citizens. So we have, in a sense, have to compensate a little bit for the lack of great leadership in our politicians, let's put it like this in general. And I agree that because of this distance now that we have, this anxiety, all these traumas which are happening, we need to have, I don't know if there are new leadership skills, because probably in the past you still needed to be a good listener, but I think it's the need is even more enhanced. So the bad news for the managers out there that the level that you need to act as a leader has increased. So you need to be much more compassionate, to listen, to care really authentically about your people, not just, blah, 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 but really personalizing, your care and your attention to your colleagues. So that is really a lot of empathy, a lot of you need to open your ears a lot more, and that is not easy. That is not easy.
I really agree with you there. I think it's like leadership in uncertain times, right? Because there's one uncertainty after the other. And for me, that's a lot about, how do you scan the external territory? What's happening out there and how are you perceiving it? But then how is your team perceiving it? And then the second part for me would be, what's the internal territory like? So where are you in your level of discomfort? And how do you recognize levels of discomfort with the people around you? So it becomes much more about tuning in nowadays than it was before. And it's interesting what you said, Bio, you were talking about, is a different type of leadership. But I do feel it's a different type of leadership because we're also sort of moving away from the I have the answer as a leader to I'm co-developing this with you and let's figure out as a team what works for us and what doesn't.
Yeah, and to build on that, Tessa, I think if we look at what leadership skills were needed maybe for the past versus what is needed for the future, it's going to be a different world. And, the future is going to be in flux and we need to be flexible as managers. And that means a lot of different things to different managers. And we need to make sure that we really understand what our individual employees want, because everyone has a different family situation or different aspirations, different beliefs and values. And if you look at the generation that is joining the workforce, they will be looking for companies with purpose. And how do they tie their personal values to the values of the company? So for those companies that don't have a purpose yet, don't stay behind because it's going to be really difficult to attract new people or to retain especially your younger generations, because they will be looking for that. So, but it also means that our managers, we need to educate them how to address purpose and how to articulate that and translate that to their colleagues and how to articulate what is the values of the company and how passionate do they feel about it and translate it, whereas in the past that might not have been necessary. So there's a whole different degree of empathy as a sort of a big box word, so to say, that is needed for the future that maybe was less necessary in the old world, so to say.
Yeah, I love everything that you've all said. So many great things, and a lot of them really relate. It's one of my friends recently was asking me, it must be really stressful, being a founder of a business and a CEO, and they're like, what's the biggest challenge? And I kind of took a second to think about it, and I realized that a lot of my stress and worry and anxiety isn't about Chris. It's even about our product. It isn't about the actual business. It's about the people. So when I'm worried or awake at night, it's like, are my people okay? How's the team doing? And it's not even about, I want to make sure this business is successful because my employees have families, have mortgages, they have kids, that they're relying on me. And I can't do it all alone. And to one of you mentioned about not having all the answers. And we were exactly in that position only 2 years ago where we lost 80% of our revenue because of COVID. And I was ashamed at one point when I was sitting down to say, I have no idea what I'm going to say to the team tomorrow. I remember having a conversation with my wife saying, I have no idea. The team's expecting me to walk in the office tomorrow and have an answer. And I just didn't have one. I had no idea how the business was going to continue going. And I realized at that moment that's okay. So I kind of came in the next day, the team thought we we're going to have this magical plan. And I said, I have no idea how we're going to get through. I don't have the answer, but together we're going to make a decision and come up with a strategy. And at that time, it was either furlough everyone or we completely reinvent the business, because 80% of our revenue had disappeared because it was all face-to-face in person. And the team said, you know what? We don't want to go on furlough. We want to recreate the company, and we're going to come up with a strategy together to take our whole business digital, which is why we're here with all of you lovely people right now. And it was one of those moments as a leader where I had to probably the first time where I felt like I had no answers whatsoever, but I realized leading with vulnerability, being vulnerable and kind of saying that I didn't have any answers actually was one of the game-changing moments of our company, because it now means that the team can come to me with ideas and challenge, and I can say I don't have the answers and I have an incredible team behind me that will help solve those solutions. And so I just wanted to add that.
And I think you also demonstrated, Chris, that, you as an inclusive leader, because when you're asking others about their thoughts, their experience, imagine the many years, maybe you have 500 years or 600-700 years of experience. I don't know how big your business is, coming from all these different sectors. They all have different personalities with different angles on the same issue. And by opening up and asking, you together co-created the solution. It's so powerful. Yeah. So a fantastic example of that. And I think that's how you create fellowship, and just like when we ask ourselves, who do we want to report to? We also want to report to someone who asks for advice and they don't have all the answers. And they are humble, and they put a feeling in our bodies that we are needed, because what we bring, is unique sometimes to a question or a complex situation. So,
definitely not easy to do. I think that's many traditional leadership competencies. I remember when I was all of the leadership training I did 10 years ago, none of these things. Leading with empathy, right? Chris, they're not your friends. Don't treat them like family. Don't talk to them about personal things. I remember things like that being told in those trainings years ago, which seems crazy now to even think about, where I'm spending most of my life with these individuals, telling me not to build personal bonds with them as well, right? But it's through that relationship that the team then go above and beyond, and you don't even have to ask them. They have personal pride in the work that they do, and also they're motivated, right? Because it's something that they're excited about, that they contributed, so they want to do well. They want to fail forward, and if they understand that they've got a team behind them that, when they do fail, says, we've got your back, let's try something else, and all celebrate the failures. We've made so many mistakes along the way. It's impossible to even get anywhere in my mind without failing multiple times. But sometimes we're so fearful of doing that we kind of are paralyzed as well.
I always wish there were awards for that. Many companies, they have like
the
Pinnacle Award, and I'm a deep believer in the Deep Ravine Award. I almost didn't make it, but who?
There is companies, Tessa. So like I told this story in the last panel, but I'll tell it very briefly again for you. Like Novartis, one of their sort of values is having a culture of curiosity. So every year they do an award for the biggest kind of failure. And they celebrate it with just the same energy and passion. And there's a trophy and there's a whole award around, this is the biggest almost success that was made. And that's, if you've got a culture, if you want to promote a culture of curiosity, you have to demonstrate that and celebrate that, reward that, financially reward that as well. So definitely. What would you say some of the other competencies that we're seeing now that are kind of required in today's VUCA world that are very important?
I was reflecting. There's been a lot of writing and research lately about when people get back into the office, a lot get a really bad experience. So they go home and they really don't want to come in again. So there are many companies out there saying, okay, the first time people come in, we really want to, make sure that a lot of people are there at the same time. We celebrate, we have team events and so on. So I think it's just so different compared to 5 years ago, where you would see all your friends and colleagues in the office. And I also feel that the level of commitment from employees, it's a little bit like you have them for loan, because you don't see them every day. They're not in the room innovating the strategy together. You really need to work harder as a leader to keep the engagement up and the connectivity up, and because when people are sitting in their homes, I saw one research this morning where 40% of all employees are working from home permanently. 30% go in 1 to 2 days a week, and then you have someone going in more often. It's just a new world where you're not physically together the same way you used to. So you just need to work harder in connecting with your team and being present and listening. And then just the last thing I want to say, we also discussed this in our pre-meeting, that when I asked my own children and, you know, teenagers, what is a great leader for you? Where do you want to work? You know, they are so excited about this inclusiveness, diversity, being heard, being listened to. So if we are not ready for that now, in 5 years, it will be even worse. Yeah.
Very true. I was reflecting also on the title for this show, Chris, which is hybrid working, right? And I think if you look at the companies today, you have sort of a spectrum of completely remote and super flexible, you can work from anywhere, towards the other end of the spectrum, you have to come back into the office 5 days a week, and then hybrid is arguably somewhere in the middle, and that's sort of today. And my belief is that hybrid is here to stay. All our kids grow up seeing their parents working hybrid or remote, and I think the great advantage of the increase in remote jobs, and we see it particularly in the US, where this is very commonly accepted, it really increases the talent pool. So it really enhance your talent pool. It can be much more diverse. So it's a great opportunity, especially in this tight labor market. But this hybrid working is here to stay. For me, I'm when I see some companies making very bold statements about coming into the office and forcing everyone back, I wonder what the children would think of those colleagues, and I wonder also how the employees feel. And when you talked about co-creation, Ditte, earlier, to say we've really discussed it together and built something together, there's different ways companies go about this, right? On this returning to work. Have you asked your employees, or is the leadership setting the policy, so to say, based on their beliefs? I'm curious. Sorry, Chris, I don't mean to
no, it's fine.
But I'm very curious to hear from the panel here, sort of what's your experience around, has it been a co-creation, you're returning to work, or has it been a very much set by the top with little input from the employees?
In our case, we have employees which are fitting what you said, Marieke. Some have, working in a factory, they have to be in the factory line 5 days a week. I mean, there is no chance.
Absolutely.
And some, of course, let's say a software developer can work from whatever place 5 days a week, or 365 days a year remote. So in many cases, it was almost a team by team or function by function discussion to understand what flexibility we could give or not. And then, of course, then you come to this issue of what is fair or not. I mean, some people may resign that, yes, some colleagues can work from their summer holiday house, and I have to come to the office or to the factory every day. But it was really trying to tailor what made sense, still with a view that as much as possible, there will be still some time where people will be back together to still create, this sense of belonging. But I agree that it's exactly what we were saying before. I think it asked then for the leader to be also flexible and to personalize a little bit, because I also have colleagues who want to go to the office, even if their job may require that they don't have to, but they just don't like, either because, they have a small flat, or they have, 5 kids running around in the background, or they just like to be there with a colleague. So some people just want to be there and not stay at home so much. So it's really, you have to personalize it, and that's super difficult, because generally companies where one size fits all, we have a global policy, everyone has to follow, and if you're not happy, you can go. Well, the job market is tight. We cannot afford to do that anymore. I think, as you said, the younger generation, and I think the older generations are learning from the younger ones to, not to accept anything anymore. And I think we have to personalize more now, which is a challenge. Yeah.
It sparked some thought for me, what you said, Marieke, about the first thing that came into my mind was trust, right? So there
good capability of the leader. That's a good leadership capability, is trust.
Yeah. So and then I always think, if you treat people like children, they'll behave like children. That's sort of one end of the spectrum, right? So there's something about, if I can't see them, then I don't know what they're doing. But on the other hand, what it sparked for me is there's an assumption when people work hybrid or from home, for me, around performance, and that we're really clear on what performance we expect from people. And I think that that's sometimes still missing in companies. So for me, I don't really care where people work from, as long as they don't work in a factory, right? If you have an office-based job, I don't really mind where you work from. I think it's really good to be clear about what the deliverables are, and also about teams are different, right? So PO, for me, I'm like, well, some teams, yeah, they can work from their holiday home.
Oh, I think you're frozen. These are the things that happen when you work from home.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone switched on the video games or something.
No, the kids are streaming Netflix right now. One of the things I was going to say is, I think one of the things that was also just being highlighted there before Tessa cut off is we have to be intentional. Very intentional about our decisions, and one of those is being very clear on what are the deliverables as well. And I made that mistake when I asked everyone to return back. We decided, okay, we're going to come in on a Monday, and we did that. Everyone came back in on the Monday, and then people were like, but then because we wasn't intentional about what are we going to be doing on Monday, everyone just kind of opened up their computers and sat there doing, and then I was like, why did we come in today, Chris? I'm not going to travel in 1.5 hours to sit there and open my laptop. So I was like, okay, mistake one. Let's do this again. And now Mondays are a day to collaborate, together, ideate, challenge each other, meetings, etc. And so that day, it literally is computers off, laptops turned off, unless it's there for the meeting. We're here to be here, present together. And then everyone loves coming in on a Monday now. And then mistake number 2, I think, from my side, is I kind of assumed we could do a lot of these. You can do definitely team building virtually, but the team said we do want some time where we're together face to face to do team building. So now we do it once a month. It works for us. Once a month, we choose an activity. I think we're doing white water rafting in a few weeks, which seems crazy that we're going to be going down a river and waterfalls together in a boat, but apparently that's what the team wants to do. So once a month we get together as a team, and it's a great way, especially for new people that are joining the business, to meet each other, build real strong bonds, and do something fun together. But if we're not intentional about making those moments happen, they just don't happen. Those water cooler moments we keep describing, you have to be very intentional about doing that. And that's a new leadership capability, maybe. I don't know what that comes under. To be able to make sure you're very intentional about making those moments happen.
Yeah. But you want to create a sense of belonging, and to create that, you have to be very intentional. Like, you have to be very deliberate about how can I sort of really create that sense of belonging that you're talking about, whether it's water rafting or every Monday you get together and have lunch with everyone and you really collaborate. It's that activity-based working, right? That you're very conscious about what are we then doing on Monday, rather than just our emails. We could also do that at home.
How are you then helping employees balance this out? Because we can't give everyone everything they want. So it's also this kind of give and take, which I think companies are really struggling with. How are you managing expectations? You're back, Tessa. You were just talking about hybrid and then you disappeared. It's funny, right? We're talking about remote work, hybrid, and then the internet goes down.
Wi-Fi guru out there shut me off.
Do you want to finish the statement? You might as well. I don't know where we went after that, but finish what you were saying. It was very interesting before we lost you.
I don't know where you lost me, but I was talking about, it was trusted about managing performance, right? That we're not really clear on what people should be delivering. Then it's hard to work remote. And I also think it's totally okay that some teams can work from their holiday home and other teams cannot. I think it's very important that you figure out in your team, what do you do as a team exclusively that nobody else does? And then what is needed in order to do that, and how often should you have, whether it's face-to-face or virtual meeting time, in order to get the best performance out of that team, and to check very regularly if this is still working or not. Because I prefer that much over a policy that says thou shalt be in the office 3 days a week. Because for me personally, that doesn't work with the diversity of the teams that you're leading. But I'm not sure how my fellow panelists think about that.
Yeah, by the way, just to fill you in, after you were saying that, we were just talking about the importance of being intentional with a lot of what we're talking about. Because if you're not intentional, these moments won't just happen. These things just won't just happen, especially in a hybrid environment. But yeah, happy to hear the other panelists' thoughts on what you just said.
one comment from me is, Tessa, I totally agree in being very clear on what can be remote, what needs to be in the office, what needs to be in a warehouse. What we have done in our company is that we have decentralized that decision, because there's also some cultural aspect in Eastern Europe. It's much more common to get into the office and be in the office. Other countries, remote work is very natural to do. So we have decentralized it like you have described, PO. But what we have seen is that we are very clear on what we expect. And personally, I'm like you, I don't mind where my team is as long as they're delivering, the 3 to 5 must-win battles we agreed, and some other KPIs, and then, getting feedback from the key stakeholders. So we have a very interesting setup that works really well for us. But when we are hiring new leaders and we have this fully remote, we can attract so much more talent, so much quicker to such a lower cost. So it's just the way to make it work, and we have fully adapted it. Our recruitment costs have went significantly down, and we can just attract some really high quality talent from rock stars, as we call it, from other sectors and industries who want to be part of that culture. So, but I guess it's very personal. We also have we have 50 DCs around the world where they all need to be in the office or have some kind of flexible relationship with the team and in 3 shifts. So we are trying to also give flexibilities in our DCs, even though it's more difficult. So I agree, if you don't jump on that wagon as a leader in 2022 about remote working and attracting the best talent, I think you lose.
Well, I mean, you will lose your people at least, yes. So you lose them eventually as a leader, yeah.
And what is the business? The business is your people. So you'll also lose your business as well. What kind of support are you giving your leaders though, right? It's never been a tougher time, I feel like, to be a leader. Again, we're coming out of the pandemic straight into a recession. It seems it's a tough time to be leaders. What kind of support and training are you providing your leaders?
Of course, to change these leadership skills, I think the starting point journey, especially when we talk about being more empathetic, more compassion, more care, it doesn't come naturally to everyone. So what we try to start with is to increase at least at the beginning, the self-awareness of our leaders, so that they understand better if they act well or not well. And then when we have increased, if you want, this level of self-awareness, then we can move to the next stage, which is, of course, to provide them with tips and tools and situational leadership type of training, where they start to act and understand what are the new behaviors they need to display with their teams. Again, with this fragmented world where some will be remote, some will be here with them. But we start journey by a lot of emphasis on self-awareness first before we can move to the next stages.
I think that's a really good point you just made there. It's hard for us to make change unless we're self-aware. But
although you shoot in the dark and it's super difficult because you think you do something well and you don't. And it's only through feedback and kind of 360 and feedback from peers or colleagues or whatever, and of course your team, that you can start to see if you are shooting in the right direction or not, to take this metaphor.
How are you doing that? Is it like a online workshop? Like what's the method you're using, just like for people?
We work kind of 360-degree questionnaires, feedback meetings to the leader, that he or she understands how good he or she acts, and then journey personalized coaching, because it's okay to have like a classroom training, but I don't think it gets that far, because again, it needs to be personalized. So we try now, and we actually through platforms, you can have access now to cheaper coaching than in the past, where you can have a coach on a platform remotely that costs a bit less than it used to be. So we can expand our capacity of coaching. Using professional coaches. Of course, we have also internal ones to really have this personalized program if you want to develop these capacities as a leader.
Yeah. There's some really great platforms out there, right, that are popping up in that space.
Yes.
In the past, it was only kind of that core leadership level that really had access
Exactly.
to coaching, but now it's kind of affordable to offer
if
that.
you can democratize it to
Yes.
much lower levels of leadership, and that I think is very impactful. So it's an hybrid, okay, another hybrid, you know, sometimes it's classroom training or webinars, and sometimes personalized coaching, or both, I mean, you know, in a combination.
Yeah, I actually did that with the team. It was quite tough. I had a 360 feedback from my team recently. I just recently got a coach, and I kind of was like, all right, this is time. I want to invest in my development. Let me get a coach. And the first thing they did was obviously sit down with all of my team members and my wife. By the way, that was a request on my behalf. He was like, Chris, no one's ever asked me to include their wife in this process. I was like, well, she's probably the most important person. She is the most important person in my life. So please include her in the process as well. And it was, you know, it was tough hearing the feedback, right? And it was tough being vulnerable. But now I have my 3 action points that I'm working on. I've shared that with the team. I'm feeding back to them. These are the things I'm working on that you've requested. This is how it's going, and keeping them up to date. And I'm doing this virtually, which is why I mentioned that, because I have an online coach now, which I never thought I would have to be able to do that. And my wife's given me some feedback, and I'm working on that too. So I think it's incredible. And now it's also become democratized and cost efficient for companies to do that. So it's great.
I wish we would stop associating the word feedback with something negative, because I feel so bad about that. I think if somebody go, hey, you know, you did a really great job, that's also feedback, you know, that's coming back.
It's true, isn't it?
Yeah. True. Let me give you some feedback. Ooh,
yeah, it's true. We all dread that annual performance at the end of every year now. And I think having, you know, constant feedback is so important. It's kind of how you move forward. And even when it's tough, it's even more important. And we kind of talk about in our office radical candor. Of just, you know, if and that's something, again, if you're new to the business, it takes a bit of getting used to. Someone just sharing. And one of my new hires recently was like, oh wow, like, you're a CEO, but anyone can say that to you and say you're wrong, or this is what I think, Chris, I think you're making a mistake here, you should do that, and in front of the whole group. And I'm like, oh great, thank you, appreciate that. Doesn't feel good at the time, but would I rather that person tell me that, or hold that on the inside and feel like they're not listened to, and their voice isn't valued? You know, it's important. But you're right, it does have a negative connotation attached to it.
In our company, we talk about that you're probably the best version of yourself the day before you close your eyes. You know, life is really about a long journey of being better every single day by getting feedback. And, you know, when I worked at RSA, you know, a global financial services company, we talk about that we had feedback junkies actually also on the senior team. And that's what they call themselves. So that's why I can use the word. They love getting feedback. We work so much with the culture. So, you know, because they really want to be better, and they knew they didn't have all the answers. So whatever it was, meetings or one-to-ones, or just give me feedback so I can learn and be better. And when they dare to open up at that time, then others also dare to, then I can learn and I can grow. So I agree with you, Tessa. It should be a privilege to get feedback. And then, of course, we need to train how to give feedback. So constructive.
Yeah, I was about to say that. There's also that. There's giving feedback, and then there's a way to give feedback.
Feedback is a gift, as we say here.
You don't have to unwrap each present.
No.
Definitely. Well, listen, before I let you go, parting takeaway for everyone listening. I'll kick off with you first, Paul-Olivier. What advice would you kind of parting nugget you would give to people listening?
Well, we have one mouth, 2 ears, so listen twice more than you speak.
Good advice. Very straight to the point there. Very good advice. Ditte?
Be authentic and be yourself, and your team will follow you.
I think don't think about just today. Don't think about tomorrow, but think about where the world is going to be in 2-3 years from now, and how you can really attract and retain your talents, because they'll be looking for purpose, connection, empathy. So really try to build that.
Love it. Last but not least, Tessa.
I think if you're a leader out there, I would say, why don't you first analyze what you're really good at? Because I believe in strength-based development. So look at what you're really good at and use those things to maybe fill any gap that you really have. But start from a place of strength, because it's hard enough nowadays to be a leader because there's all these things that are being asked for you. So celebrate yourself a little. Love that one. We always focus on what we can't do or what we're bad at, right? We focus our attention there so much as well. It's really, well, look, thanks so much for this session. And I feel like we need to just sort of tip of the iceberg. And it's a tough time right now to be a leader in any part of the organization as well. So give yourself some grace. Give yourself a break. That would be one of my piece of advice as well. It's like, give yourself a break sometimes. Don't be so hard on yourself, because we're all struggling. We're all in this together.